Algeria. Behind the rich and lovely coastal plain, the fertile 10th, where 9/10 live. Behind the green north slopes of the coastal range, where the last rain clouds break. Behind the dry uplands and high plateau, where wave upon wave of brown, rolling hills form the barrier of the Atlas Mountains. Behind the great emptiness of gravel plains and stony steplands is the Sahara Desert, to whose immensity only the world's great oceans can compare. It is the same strange irony here as in other parts of the world that the forces which created oil those millions of years ago should have laid it down in places so inaccessible to man. Algeria is a young country, eager for progress. She is rich in oil, but unless it can be brought to her ports, she can never be rich from oil. So far, 2 outlets exist, from Haoud El Hamra to Bougie, and from In Amenas to Laskira in Tunisia. But now Algeria needs a 3rd and bigger pipeline to the port of Azul. How might a young country find the means for a project on this scale? The Kuwait Development Fund was prepared to provide a loan to cover part of the cost. Constructors John Brown offered to undertake the entire project of design, procurement, construction and commissioning, training and 3 years of line operation, together with arranging the remaining long-term credits, covering 3/4 of the total cost, provided by British banks under the guarantee of the British government. Engineers and skilled technicians, the bulk of the steel pipe and materials required were supplied from Britain. Additional plant operators and heavy equipment from the United States. The balance of steel pipe was from Germany and Italy, turbines from France, and the major contribution of manpower from Algeria herself. All were to be assembled in Algeria, a major logistic exercise for which planning and preparation were completed in 4 months. CJB's contract covered the construction of the pipeline, 28 inches in diameter and 500 miles long, from Haoud El Hamra to Azul. And besides this, gathering and loading terminals with 440,000 cubic meters storage capacity, deballasting and pressure relief stations, 2 one-mile-long submarine loading lines, and housing for operating personnel and other ancillary civil works. Included as a final stage was a complete handover and training scheme for Algerian operators and the operation and management of the pipeline for a period of 3 years. The total cost of this project was £25 million. The peak construction force numbered 500 expatriates and 4,000 Algerians who worked with £3 million of construction plant to lay 100,000 tons of steel pipe to carry upwards of 10 million tons of crude oil a year from the desert to the sea. Pipe. 500 miles of it. Pyramids of pipe. 68,000 pipe lengths from Middlesbrough, Rotterdam and Taranto to Algiers, Mostaganem, Philippeville. More than 40 shiploads. And for every pipe cargo, there will be 5 others. From plant to paint, from boat to bitumen, from stationary to storage tanks. 200 shiploads. Our supply lines start long and will end longer. We are working 2 pipeline gangs, or spreads. One from the sea to the center, one from the center to the south. Starting up, north spread. The dozer clears the path, which will carry the ditch, which will carry the pipe, which will carry the oil under the rich vineyards of the coastal plain. Algerian wine is renowned for strength and body. Here, a little is sacrificed for vintages of higher octane. The problem of ditching. How to dig 5 feet fastest? The answer depends on the ground. We have it all, from wet soil to stony gravel, from hard rock to running sand. You use every technique in the book. Pipe, pipe, pipe. 40 shiploads, 400 train loads, 4,000 truckloads. Though 1,000 horses pull this plow, you go as fast or as slow as the ground will let you. This is where the south spread starts, at a map reference in the lonely, stony semi-desert behind the Atlas Ranges. Deserts are too hard or too soft for easy ditching. Here, when the armor fails, you call on the artillery. Now the slow pull into the mountains, winding up through the defiles and gorges of the high Atlas, a trainload a day for nearly 40 weeks. Now the long descent to the edge of the great desert and its oases, like pictures on a date box lid. These are the ammunition dumps of pipelining, offloading points at Sahara railheads, depots, distribution centers, where the ponderous 40-foot tubes flow docile through practiced hands like sheep through the dip. Often the pipe depot is also the double jointing yard. If you can double join 2 lengths together in a depot like this, then half the welder's job is done when you get the pipe out onto the line. The pipe moves to the men. Very few men. The welding is automatic. Out on the pipeline, you have the problems of big distances and a job which is always moving. Here, you are centralized, so you organize yourself to make the most of it. When your ditch is dug, you pad the bottom with soft earth. Stones, which could damage the pipe or its coating, must now be removed. The swing and whip on 80 feet of steel is alarming, yet it must be handled like glass. A dented rim and the perfect join cannot be made. Only one sort of bent pipe is welcome, that which is bent by design to fit the ground's contours. November 1964. The dotted line, which will be solid, the line of pipes, which will be a pipeline, stretches down Algeria like a line of longitude on a map. At Azou, where the pipeline will end, there is a large terminal and deballasting station to construct. At the Saharan end, another big terminal with pump station, and between, 2 more pumping stations and a pressure relief station. The south spread, camped in a stony wilderness. Now the ditch is dug and the pipe strung out. The rest follows inexorably. A chain of processes which we call pipelining. A conveyor belt, except the belt stands still. The men and machinery move. Line up and weld. Clean and prime. Coat, wrap and lay. The trick is the timing. Each process a jump ahead of the last. The right jump. Now the whole project is in gear, its parts moving forward together towards their target dates. But completion is far off yet. This is the long, slogging middle section of a project, when the beginning has dropped behind one horizon and the end not yet come up on the other. The month of stamina, when the back of the job is slowly and surely broken. The north spread, camped in foothill country under the slopes of the coastal range. There are miles ahead that will seem like 10. weld and move, then weld and move again. A 500-mile pipeline, 34,000 pipes for each spread. Average day's progress by each spread, 1¼ miles. Best day's progress, 6½ miles. Total men employed on spread, 1,350. 500 miles to be built in 8 months. Clean and prime. Coat, wrap and lay. Keep moving or the next gang is on your heels. We cross the hills by a 4,000-foot pass. The Atlas Mountains, named after the man who carried the universe on his back. We're getting to know how he felt. Back on the beach, an important phase of the operation now swings into action. We are preparing to lay the 2 undersea pipelines out into the deep waters of Azul Bay, where tankers riding at mooring buoys will take on their cargoes of crude oil. These ocean lines, specially coated and wrapped, will be drawn on bogies to the water's edge and floated out in line with the final position. Then the floats will be released by the divers, and the pipe with its continuous weight of concrete coating will settle to the seabed. April 1965. 8 months have been allowed for the construction of the pipeline, and there are still 2 to go. Now, the north spread heads for where the south spread started, and the south goes hard for the end of the line. Now, the ports of the north are 500 miles of mountain rail and desert road from where we work, in the heat and dust of the Saharan summer. June 1965. The last miles, the last push, down into the Sahara and the oil fields of Hassi Massoud. Up in the north, it is still spring. The spread has passed on, like an armored column over the Atlas and far away. Now we are tidying up the battlefield, giving the pipe a proper burial. Now pump stations and terminals are taking final shape. This is the time when the jigsaw of parts, which is a great project, begins to show its pattern, when the separate pipes and pumps and tanks must be linked into one flawless chain. There can be no let-up, no coasting home on a job like this. The nearer the end, the less time left, the greater the urgency. And the nearer the end, the greater the anxiety, that everything should dovetail, that everything should work properly. We are anxious, but we are optimistic too. There is a smell of completion in the air, a smell of lubricants and wet paint. The last brushstroke and the portrait of a project is complete. Pump stations, turbines, generators, motor-operated valves, loading lines. Every piece part of the effort of moving the crude oil from the desert to the coast. The project is complete, except for testing, the ironing out of snags, the exacting search for teething troubles, the meticulous checking and double-checking of standards and specifications. Meanwhile, we are handing over. Algeria owns this pipeline. Now she will run it. And it's part of our job to see that those who take charge when we leave are ready to do so. Under the ground, 500 miles of pipeline are tested and ready. Now the graders erase the traces of the machines that have gone before them, and soon the farmer will erase the grader's traces. The stitches are out, and the scar will heal. February 1966. The rest is in other hands. Skippers and seamen and tugboatmen, the technicians at the terminals, the operators on the pump stations. Our 400 men have been and gone home. And of their main work, the pipeline, only the scar remains, where the oil now flows from the Sahara. This is all that's left behind when you've lined up and welded and cleaned and primed and coated and wrapped and filled the ditch, which carries the pipe, which carries the oil from wells to shore, from shore to ship, which waits at anchor, and the pumps begin to fill the first tanker.